SoRSE.com. I'm Ashley Manning, and this is Careers in Cannabis. On this show, we sit down with staffing agencies, cannabis companies, and other industry professionals to discuss employment opportunities in the burgeoning cannabis industry. Today, we're joined by Diana Eberlein, whose passion for marketing and branding, combined with her own personal journey of searching for a reliable, consistent cannabis product, led her to her own career in cannabis as the Vice President of Marketing at SoRSE Technology. All right. Today, my guest is Diana Eberlein, the Vice President of Marketing at SoRSE Technology. Welcome to the show, Diana.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for joining us today. I know finishing up 2020 has been busy for all of us, and things are changing. We're all doing things we've never done before, and it's a learning experience. And we're going to go into 2021 with some great skill sets that we didn't have for sure.
Absolutely. I feel like the cannabis industry has always been one that's had to pivot a lot, but 2020 brought that to a whole new level. And now going into 2021, I feel like everyone is preparing for another pivot. So my plans for marketing are less concrete than usual, which gives me a little anxiety, but at the same time allows for a lot of flexibility if we decide we have to go in a different direction.
Yeah, being able to pivot is always good in any industry, but especially cannabis. I feel like every single month we're jumping over this hoop and that hoop and adding a pandemic into it. But hey, we're essential.
Exactly.
We are thankful to have jobs, and we're growing as an industry. And there's 54,000 people unemployed, and were employed, and we have an opportunity to help these unemployed people as well. But today we're here to talk about you and what you were doing prior to making your pivot. So maybe our listeners can hear what you did, not during a pandemic time, and maybe give some encouraging advice to them to making that transition. So you've been the VP of marketing at SoRSE for a little over 2.5 years now, but I'd love to start what you were doing prior to entering the cannabis industry specifically.
So absolutely, and it was quite an interesting pivot for me. I grew up in a very conservative household, went to a private Jesuit college in Los Angeles, went from there into entertainment marketing, so product placement for major CPG brands, BlackBerry, Crayola, worked with a couple alcohol brands. So kind of worked on the brand side a lot, but from an agency perspective. I relocated up to Seattle, frankly, just because I fell in love with the area and the lifestyle. The only thing I didn't really understand was the cannabis stuff. Everyone I knew when I moved to Seattle was consuming cannabis, whether they were an entrepreneur, a musician, a lawyer, a doctor. They were all using it for different reasons. And I thought there has to be something to this industry, this product. And I tried to educate myself on it, which was really hard and frankly really frustrating. And that actually is what got me hooked into working in this space and making it easier for people to navigate. Because a lot of my friends were using cannabis for anxiety, and I don't think there's a human, especially in 2020, that hasn't had some anxiety. So that's what people were using it for, and I thought there's got to be something to this. If all of my friends who don't look like what I was told was the stereotypical cannabis consumer, there must be something to this. So I dug in, and that was right around the time I had started working for myself, doing consulting for different CPG brands, talking about celebrity partnerships, how to execute those effectively and efficiently. And I realized that this industry, more than any, was kind of handcuffed by all the regulations, and there were very few ways that brands could get their name and product out there without violating any regulation. I mean, even now, Instagram will still shut down cannabis brand accounts or influencers all the time. So we still are running into that, but there are ways that people can market effectively in this space creatively and do it legally. So that was kind of how I ended up in this space, teaching them some of my tricks from mainstream marketing and how you could take circumstances and marketing opportunities that other brands in different industries used and take some key takeaways from that and apply that to cannabis, even though it's not necessarily a perfect parallel. So that was quite a pivot for me, going from not consuming cannabis, not understanding the industry, and then really wanting to help them get their message out to a larger audience.
How long did that take? Because there's so many sources of information out there, and it's like, well, I got this information from this website, this information from that website. Who's right? And so how long did that take you to really understand that?
Exactly the issue I ran into. I didn't have a trusted resource because I grew up, reading Shape magazine. So if Shape magazine didn't say it, I didn't understand it. And even, I've been working here 2.5 years, and I think about 6 months ago, my dad said, "Oh, I think I'm going to try this thing called CBD." It was in Men's Health, and I was so frustrated because I've been talking about CBD for the last 2.5+ years, and I just thought, that just goes to show, what a mainstream audience, mainstream platform rather, can do to an audience like my father. He just took it like it was from the Bible. Like, oh, let's try this. They said it's okay.
Men's Health,
Um,
it's the new Bible for men.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're going with. So, it took me a really long time to educate myself, understand it, and I'm still learning new things about cannabis and all the other cannabinoids that we aren't talking about. THC and CBD kind of fight for the limelight, but there are so many other cannabinoids that we'll eventually learn more about. So I'm still learning. But that was originally when I first got into the space. I wanted to find a solution to help people like me understand this product, get reintroduced to cannabis, because cannabis, when I was in college, was a very different thing. You got it in a paper bag in an alley and you were happy if it didn't have twigs in it. Now it's very different, and the way we talk about cannabis and how it's, with ingestibles, which is what, my company primarily works with now. um, it's very different with how you analyze quality, and definitely different than how it was when we were in college.
Absolutely. I don't miss those days.
No, not at
I don't
all.
miss them. I do admire seeing this industry grow into an industry and being able to find the products when you can. You got some new states coming on board, so hopefully everyone will have access to it soon as well. It's hard to feel that balance. I have access here to it in California, and then there's other people who don't have access to it in other places. So it's definitely got some work to do, but that'll be growth of the transformation of the industry and having more people like yourself coming into it and saying, this is what we can do with it, and thinking creatively as well. I can't imagine thinking on a marketing scale. How can I take something that's federally illegal and push it out to the masses without violating, like you said, other legalities? And I know on a previous conversation we were discussing, what's next for cannabis marketing. There's so many different ways it could go. Are you still considering brainstorming those ideas? You don't have to share it if
I mean, I'm always thinking of what's next. It's part of like what we have to do as a brand is prepare for what's next. And what we're trying to do at SoRSE is really show the parallels between the mainstream food and beverage industry and cannabis when it comes to infused products. The safety regulations, abiding by the FDA, even though we don't know where the FDA will go, we've seen what they've done in the past. So we can plan for that and prepare. We're in a much better space, and brands will be in a better position come federal legalization. And I mean, it's coming. I can't imagine that with all of the revenue that the states that have legalized it are able to benefit from, that states wouldn't be open to looking at how they can bring a new product into the market safely. And look, all the other states haven't burned to the ground yet. So I feel like that alone is a sign that this isn't what people feared.
reefer
Um,
madness doesn't really exist.
no, it's not a thing. This
It
is
Unless you consider the giggles madness, it's a great antidepressant. We don't need the label claim. Like,
well, the only downside is if you get the munchies. That was my downside. It was like, all right, I ate a little extra ice cream, but aside from that, there's a lot of good that's coming from this. And like you made a great point talking about the fact that we're employed. Who would have thought that we'd be working in an industry that was once federally illegal across the board, that would then be called an essential need? That's a huge move for this industry. And I feel like it kind of just went like got like a little bit swept under the rug. Like people just kept talking about how much money the industry was making, not necessarily that someone said this is an essential need.
Absolutely.
So many other industries got shut down, and friends and family, were laid off or furloughed, and I was still going into an office because we still had people going into a lab to create the ingredient to infuse products. Just really crazy to think about where this industry is now in comparison to five years ago.
Do you,
No, don't even 20 years ago. Completely different.
do you think 2020 has actually sped up the industry in some essence because we're really having to get creative?
Yeah, I think it's accelerated the industry in some major ways. I think it's eliminating the charlatans that were trying to, make an extra buck, get in here and kind of hustle. The quality of the products has increased at a rate where only the real McCoys, if you will, can survive and continue to progress. So I think it's actually helping the industry in an odd way move forward, become more professional, and at a faster pace.
Yes, that's exciting for me to see that professionalism. So, what were some of your biggest challenges prior or right when you entered the industry? What did you immediately? You're like, whoa, this has been a challenge for me.
One of the first challenges I don't think is as big of a challenge as it used to be, but I didn't fit in. I Granted, I'm in Seattle. It's different than LA's market. LA's market's different than San Diego's market. Every market's different. Seattle had a certain audience that I came from LA. I was wearing high heels. I don't fit in Seattle to begin with because everything here is cobblestone.
You
So
get
I'm like,
stuck in the
yeah,
street.
so I don't really fit in here to begin with. But I went to a cannabis event, and someone kind of came up to me and said, "You gotta like take it down a notch." Like, and I just remember thinking, "Same party you are. I don't know what you're talking about." And it made me want to fight more to be in this space because my friends that are my age who are being reintroduced to cannabis, these are people who really will utilize and continue to utilize this product and replace their glass of wine or their whiskey at the end of the night. And this will benefit their lives. And I felt like if I can get in here and show my friends that this is a space that they feel that they can associate and relate to, then there's a real opportunity. So I felt like I had to play this different role at first. And then slowly, as I met more people and they understood what I was working towards, I realized that it wasn't everyone that was like that. There's a really accepting community in cannabis that's willing to help each other out to continue to progress the industry, which I found really beautiful. That's a really rare quality to find. Coming from mainstream CPG, Pepsi and Coke aren't sitting next to each other going, "Hey, you know what you should do? That would be a great campaign." We are out of that phase, but when we first started working in cannabis, there was a lot of, hey, how do we figure out these regulations? How do we work together to make these products more accessible to people who need them? And understanding that motivation and the fact that this really was about accessibility for a lot of people, it was humbling, but it was also like it just gave you kind of like warm and fuzzies. And like I'm not one of those people who usually says that, but it definitely made me feel like there was more of a movement than from the outside looking in. I didn't understand it at first. So that was probably one of my biggest hurdles was really understanding the core of this industry and finding kind of where I fit. Um, and then the other part of it was probably understanding all the products and different applications. Again, still kind of learning that. I did one dab once, not my thing. I had no idea what I was doing. I just felt like I need to understand what this is and how people use it and why. Um, and I mean, even now, I know what works for me, and understanding that what works for me doesn't necessarily work for someone else. I can give my experience, but by no means does that mean that it's going to have the same effect for someone else. There's still so much learning that comes with that, and sometimes that frustrates me because I want to understand it all. And I think that's also what makes it so addicting to work in this space is there's always something new you're learning about and an advancement, a new product. There's so many new products out there. It's like you want to try them all. It's kind of, I can't try all of them. They're not meant for me. But it's really exciting to see where the space is going. And the more I'm seeing microdose products coming out that are meant for social consumption and something you could drink at a barbecue and kind of build your high. I'm excited to see products like that hit the market because it's the same as a White Claw. That's kind of how I'm envisioning this space going, and no one flinching anymore if you're having a CBD or THC beverage.
Right. That's great advice that you're giving to not only career seekers, but also consumers. No matter how many times I tell people, look, tinctures don't work for me. It might work for you. And no matter how many times you tell that same person the same thing over and over again, they don't get it. So I think we definitely need to push out that message as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so that's some great
And
advice
then
there.
still trying to explain to people that CBD is not intoxicating because every once in a while I'll get a text and it'll be like, hey, is this product going to melt my face off? And it's a CBD product. And I'm like, no, let's start at the beginning. And, the other part of that is understanding how to work with that, go to a dispensary and ask the right questions. That was also something that was really difficult for me, just becoming a consumer in this space and understanding, what's out there, because it's easy to have a bad bud tender experience. Go and ask the wrong questions, or they're going to put their favorite product on you, and it might be a really strong, potent product. And I'm like, no way. But now I know the right questions to ask. And really, it's about explaining to that bud tender what your desired effect is and what your experience level is. If you've never tried cannabis, you don't want a 100 milligram edible right away. You want to start low and kind of figure it out. It is a little bit of trial and error. And that can be a really frustrating thing to understand, but I talk about it as if it's like pretend you're a freshman in college and you're just trying to figure out your tolerance of alcohol. Kind of the
Perfect.
same.
Yes.
More vodka than rum.
Top shelf versus
Right,
regular
exactly.
shelf. High octane high caffeine versus the low caffeine. I know some people have described hemp based products versus cannabis related products as one being the caffeinated and one being the non caffeinated. There might be some caffeine in there, but not enough to make you get the jitters and make you anxious.
Right, right.
So back onto your career. Don't knock the stilettos either in the cannabis industry.
No,
You will see me at MJ BizCon and all the expos when we're back on. You'll see me
yep,
also wearing my heels, not
yep.
stilettos, but some heels as well. So if you need a
I still have mine on now.
okay. I bet you do. As I told you, I hope that meeting you had a couple weeks ago, you were wearing the stilettos because that'll close the
I think
deal.
that was. It's like I dress the part that I want to play in that meeting. It's, there's a day where I wear my slip on like old school kids. And then there's a time where I'm like, no, the heels need to come out, especially right now. Working from home, I hadn't worn heels in a few months for a while. And coming back, I was like, these aren't that comfortable. I got to get back into it.
Well, I'm glad you put the stilettos on, and so let's talk a little bit about SoRSE, what you're doing now today, and for the past 2.5 years, and what and who is SoRSE. To me, I think SoRSE, we're bringing in products and ingredients, but I don't know if that's exactly what you guys do or not.
So we're a technology company. We're actually cannabis adjacent. We can apply our water soluble emulsion technology to any oil based ingredient. So we enter the market with CBD and THC, but you can apply our technology to any cannabinoid, terpene, any other functional ingredient that you're looking to infuse your product with. There's a number of reasons why people have started using SoRSE in their products, and one of the main reasons is it mitigates that cannabis flavor. It's notoriously difficult to put in a product and not pack it with sugar to cover the cannabis flavor. With SoRSE, the flavor is mitigated to where you need just natural flavoring. A lot of our clients' products, CBD infused sparkling waters, have 15 or less calories, all natural flavoring. Grapefruit is a really great complement to cannabis, actually, as well as broad spec. We've really entered the market with beverage, but you can infuse edibles, gummies, topicals even with our product. So any infused good is a good candidate probably for SoRSE Technology as a water soluble CBD.
So you guys don't actually do anything. You don't need a license for cannabis. You guys are
We don't touch the plant.
okay.
So when it comes to CBD, we're just converting it. When it comes to THC, we license our technology to the producer who has a license. So that's how that works in different states. For example, we have a group we've partnered with in Washington called Evergreen Herbal that creates THC source on site and infuses their products at their facility.
I've heard you describe it as like a Splenda model for cannabis.
Yeah, I use the Splenda model. We put powered by source on a lot of our products packaging. We want the consumer to know the benefits that they're getting with source, which is near perfect dosing. It's going to taste great. It's going to be a consistent experience, which is anyone who's had a bad edible experience knows that consistency is key. So we want them to know that. We want them to go into stores and ask for uh, products powered by source. Um, Splenda did something similar when they entered the market, and products that were using Splenda because they thought it was a healthier sugar alternative were putting Splenda on the side of their can. Very similar to what we're trying to do. We look at this as identifying the safest, highest quality products on the market and making it easy for the consumer to go in and select these products in a super saturated market.
That's going to be key to setting that brand apart from other brands. I know I would want the most advanced technology out there available, and it sounds like Source is doing it. It's very unique. I'd love to go deeper on that, but not on the Careers in Cannabis podcast. I'd love to
It's actually how I found Source.
by look.
I tried one of their products that was powered by Source, and I was like, how do people not know about this product? And that's how I ended up here. Was I was like, we have to find a way to get you guys out into more things because my friends love your product, but it's purely growing on word of mouth. And I was like, that's not enough. Like as a marketer, I'm like, you gotta want to do more there. So we continued, working together. But that's how I got on board with Source. Was I fell in love with one of their products, and then I tried a few more, and had, again, the same consistent experience. And when you're motivated like that, I knew I would never work harder than I do here because I loved the product and I felt that it added so much value to people's lives that it was something that I had to work on. Like there wasn't a choice. I had to work with Source in some capacity.
It's an industry where passion can take you pretty far. I said it on my last interview, and here we are again talking about how passion can take you to that next step. And not that we could encourage everybody to go out, try all the products you want out in the dispensary, find your favorite one that you're passionate about, and try and get a job with them. One of my jobs as well, careers were working for a brand that I found a consistent product that worked, and I'm like, this is great. Like, how do we push this message a little bit further? And with your experience, you know exactly how to do that.
Right. It's whenever you work for a startup, whether it's in cannabis or any industry, passion plays a huge component in that because you're not picking up a 9 to 5 lifestyle. This not to say this is your life because you should always have a personal life and a work life balance, but when you're passionate, you work a 12-hour, 14-hour day. I don't think there's anyone in my company that could say that they work, oh, yeah, 40 hours is standard. I don't think it is. And I don't think it's because the company is asking that of people. I think people are willing to give it because they want to do better. We want to make better products. We want to perfect things. But you need that passion to do that. And I think that's with any startup, whether it's cannabis industry or another industry.
Great advice for sure. With that, someone who's looking to enter a career in cannabis, what would be something you would want to give them as they're, they don't know they were in your shoes. They may not fit in. They don't know anything about cannabis. What's some advice you would give them?
One of the first things I did, and obviously this is a little different now in the age of 2020 and COVID, I went to some events just to see what they were like, see who was there, um, dig into some brands that were there, why they were there, what they were touting. There's always going to be a brand with a big neon green marijuana leaf. It's always going to be there, and that's okay. There's an audience for that. But I was trying to identify where I fit in, and I just continued to network. In this day and age, it's different. The way you educate yourself, I think you have to work a little bit harder now because you don't have the in-person events to rely on where you can go and meet 10 people right off the bat. I feel like LinkedIn has played a huge, I think actually you and I connected on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
but LinkedIn has played a huge role in my networking this year. Even when I'm going to a virtual event, people will reach out to me separately so that they can keep the relationship and the conversation going beyond the event. Um, People are able to share their thoughts about brands, marketing, the way the industry is going. And joining those groups on LinkedIn has given me that access still that I'm not able to get at events right now. And I think a lot of people can learn and kind of identify who they want to, work with and associate with through LinkedIn. It's, I always joke about a personal brand, and obviously the stilettos are kind of part of that. But you can see someone's personal brand on LinkedIn by the type of content they post, the people that they're engaging with. And I think that's a really great way to identify mentors, or take some key takeaways. I mean, I have a few LinkedIn personal branding strategies that I've developed, not from myself, but from looking at other influencers in this space and saying, you know what, I might not agree with everything they're saying or their product or their favorite products, but their strategy in terms of how they're educating the audience that is paying attention to them, there's always key takeaways you can take from that, whether you like it or not. So that's something I think people should be really utilizing and taking the time to educate themselves in. Look at articles that people are being quoted in. Look those people up on LinkedIn. Dig into their backgrounds, who they work for, what brands. It feels like it's like
Stop.
a social media stalking thing, but it's in a professional way.
I can relate. That was the first thing, similar thing is going to events, all the speakers. I want to know more about who these speakers are, their backgrounds, and you can really study this industry very quickly by just paying attention to the details and the people that are currently involved. It's actually a small industry. I don't know if people realize how small it really is, but
Well, they hear MJ BizCon had 30,000 people at it, and they're like, wow, this is a huge industry. But you know what? We all kind of know each other in a different way. Like, we're all connected. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but in cannabis. And again, I think a lot of that is because the pioneers, and I by no means consider myself a pioneer in this space at all. I'm not. I'm still a newbie, and I still say that to this day. But the pioneers in the space did have to work together, and they did have to collaborate. MJ BizCon, when it started, was super small, and people who go back to MJ BizCon, who are at the first MJ BizCon now, like laugh at it because they're like, this became a commercialized product that it's not the same for them. Um, and it's changed a lot, but I think in a good way. Um, I've lost my train of thought.
don't worry about it. It's totally okay. Is you're good. I want to go into knowing if SoRSE is hiring. Is SoRSE hiring, or are you guys looking for talent? Do you plan on growing?
we we are growing. We are currently not hiring at this time. We actually just moved facilities though to make room for more people. We pride ourselves on our large R&D team. We have about 30 employees in R&D, constantly trying to innovate, make better products, make better product offering, better solutions, and just be able to support our clients better. And that is something we continue to invest in. And as we continue to grow, I'm hoping we'll get some more people in marketing because we run on a lean and mean team over here. We get a lot done, and my team is wonderful. But I know that a couple more people would certainly be helpful. And I know we're not the only brand who could use a few more people in every department.
Are you?
Um,
Do you guys are you looking when you are looking? Would it be people in the food and beverage industry that would be most inclined to apply for a job with SoRSE?
you know, I would say we're predominantly food and bev background, in terms of our leadership and our management. But a lot of our newer employees, some of them are right out of school or came from. Actually, someone that runs our production facility came from beer, was brewing beer before. Um, but we had, I would say it's like 50-50 because I didn't come from food and bev. I had an understanding of CPG products. I think the number one thing we look for is someone who's worked at a startup. Because, like I said, that passion, that drive, that understanding that your role isn't going to fit in this box, you might wear a couple extra hats or just be told to figure it out.
I can
You
relate.
just, yeah. Um, that's the startup life, and I think there's a certain type of person that chooses that. There are obviously bigger companies that you hear about and read about that are a few hundred employees. That's going to run a little differently. However, it's still very much going to be that rip and run startup mode because cannabis as an industry changes so frequently. So I personally think that, for me, when I'm interviewing people, it'd be great if they have food and bev experience, but I'm more interested in whether or not they've worked for a startup. It's how they overcome problems. Are they willing to get their hands dirty? I mean, our COO, Tyler Peterson, is the first guy in line running the production line if we're late, or he'll work weekends, and that's because that's what we did to get here. We don't know another way. We're always going to say, okay, all hands on deck, and you have to be prepared for that mentality. So that's what I look for personally. Obviously, with R&D and product development, we are looking for generally more people who have experience in food and bev, but all levels, we're looking for the passion, probably more than anything.
I look forward to the 2021 growth and the hiring of SoRSE. And I appreciate your time today. I don't want to keep you too much
No,
longer.
thank you
And
so much.
this has been a great conversation for our listeners that are either looking for a career in cannabis, or those who want to advance their role as well in cannabis. And maybe they're looking for a new company. Someone told me a statistic the other day that you'll have 3 jobs per year working in cannabis for the average person. And I think that might be true.
It doesn't shock me. When I was first entering the space, a lot of the people I met were constantly switching jobs and roles and functions, and whether it was for a different brand or just a different role that was completely different than what they were doing before. And one thing I will say, and you can end on this, I guess, I think working in cannabis, if you can survive and keep up with the pace here, you can work anywhere.
I
I
agree.
think you work harder working in this space than in probably any industry. And you will be able to apply this basic skill sets that you learn here to any other industry.
100% agree. Well, thank you so much, Diana.
Yeah,
And good luck ending 2020. And I
you
send
too.
you many positive vibes entering 2021. Go ahead and
Of
stay on
course.
the line, though, for a minute, and we'll chat a little bit after. All right.
Sounds good.
You can follow our series, Careers in Cannabis, as well as more great shows like this one at trichomes.com. If you're a member of the cannabis community and you have a story you want to tell, please reach out. You can reach the show by emailing careersincannabis@trichomes.com. I'm Ashley Manning. Take care and be well going into 2021.